Morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are delighted to welcome you to the first day of the workshop on energy efficiency, policy, and financing. This workshop is organized by the ASEAN German Energy Program team, a jointly implemented program by the ASEAN Center for Energy and GIZ. My name is Nella, Communication Officer at the Asean Center for Energy, and I will be the MC for the workshop today. The objectives of the workshop are to present the mapping results on energy efficiency, financing policy, and implementation in ASEAN, to align stakeholders' understanding on how to develop bankable energy efficiency projects, to initiate networking and matchmaking between various energy efficiency stakeholders, and to conduct a multi-stakeholder dialogue to update and exchange the current state of energy efficiency financing development in ASEAN. Before we begin, I would like to kindly remind everyone in terms of the general guideline of the workshop today. First, I would like to kindly suggest everyone for non-speakers to turn off your microphone and camera to reduce the background noises and only unmute if they wish to speak or present. And the last one, those who wish to ask or speak may use the chat room and then the moderator will acknowledge the request to speak. So without further ado, it is an honor to introduce and welcome the guests to our table. I would like to invite Dr. Nuki Agia Utama, the Executive Director of ACE, to deliver the first welcome remarks.
Yes, thank you, Nella. Good morning, colleagues from ASEAN, colleagues from the GIZ, colleagues from ASEAN Center for Energy. I think today is very great pleasure for me to attend and to give opening remark, and would like also to convey to my colleagues, Honorable Dr. Sinsuk Prasad, the Director General, Department of Alternative Energy Development and Efficiency Thailand, and also as the EENC Assistant Coordinator. Also, a colleague of mine, Mr. Sergei Makarov, the Principal Advisor of AGEP from GIZ, Germany, and focal points of EENC SSN from ASEAN member states, speakers, participants from government, financial institutions, as well as the expert and from universities and also from business and private sectors. First of all, today is very precious moment for me to welcome you to the workshop on the energy efficiency policy and financing in Southeast Asia. This workshop that will be conducted today emerged from the mapping of energy efficiency financing in Southeast Asia reported by the ACE and GIZ back in 2019. And also based on the ASEAN cooperative projects on financing mechanism design for EENC project implementation, report by the ACE and also JIVE program in 2018. So the main purpose of our event today is to support ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, or in short we call it APAC. The APAC program area number 4, which is to achieve aspirational target for reducing energy intensity by 32% in 2025 based on 2005 levels, and encourage further energy efficiency and conservation efforts. To achieve the aspirational target, the region needs to enhance the development and dissemination of financing mechanism and scheme for various sectors. And also based on our database as of 2019, the energy intensity reduction in the region has reached about 21.8%, which shows a continuous improvement, but should be accelerated with the remaining 5 years up until 2025. So today's workshop hopefully could also support member states in developing and implementing effective EE financing policies and mechanisms through knowledge sharing, multi-stakeholders discussion, matchmaking, and networking, which will further contribute to their national and regional APAC target for energy efficiency and conservation. So I'm delighted that ACE, together with EENC, SSN focal points, and of course the support from GIZ, as well as key partners, are taking a concrete step to initiate the conduct of this workshop. So again, this workshop gathers members from ASEAN Federation of Engineering Organization, or AFEO, financial institutions such as ADB, AIIB, KDB, PFAN, CICF, ESCO Industry Alliance, Carbon Trust, SEVIA, and policymakers from the ASEAN region to align the regional EE financing efforts. So I encourage those present here today to share your views on EE financing from your countries and institution perspective, so that ASEAN community can support each other in reaching the target of development of the energy efficiency in the region. So I would like to take this chance to express my gratitude for your continuous and valuable support to the activities as well as to ACE. And let me also express our sincere gratitude and appreciation to GIZ for the continuous support and also excellent arrangement for the workshop under the ASEAN German Energy Program, or AGEP. So wishing you all a fruitful discussion, a good health, and hope that you enjoy your online session. Thank you very much. Back to you, Nela.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nuki, for your excellent speech. And I would like to invite now Dr. Sarat Prakopchat, Director of Energy Regulation and Conservation Division, Department of Alternative Energy Development and Efficiency Thailand, as EENC SSN Coordinator.
Thank you, Mr. Sergey Makarov, Principal Advisor, ASEAN German Energy Program, AGEP GIZ, Dr. Nuki Atya Uttama, the Executive Director of ASEAN Center for Energy, distinguished speakers and distinguished participants. Good morning to you all from Thailand. First of all, Dr. Prasad Sinsupasad, the Director General of the EDE, asked me to send his apology for not being able to give welcome remarks due to his urgent mission today. So on behalf of Dr. Prasad Sinsupasad, Director General of the EDE, as well as the EENC SSN Coordinator, it is my great pleasure to deliver welcoming remarks for the virtual workshop on energy efficiency policy and financing in ASEAN under the ASEAN German Energy Program today. I would like to thank German Corporation for International Cooperation, or GIZ, on behalf of the German Federal Ministry of Cooperation and Development and the ASEAN Center for Energy for organizing this virtual workshop through the facing of the COVID-19 pandemic situation. ASEAN German Energy Cooperation has begun since 2007 in ASEAN German Mini Hydro Program, and furthermore cooperation on ASEAN RESP Phase 1 in 2010 and Phase 2 in 2013, which mainly focused on renewable energy development. And in 2016, ASEAN German Cooperation has started the ASEAN German Energy Program, or AGEP Phase 1, which aims to improve wider regional coordination for the promotion of renewable energy and energy efficiency through a sustainable energy for all. Now, with additional focus on energy efficiency, ACE and GIZ are jointly implementing ASEAN German Energy Program Phase 2. The program is commissioned by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development and is implemented from October 2016 up to June 2019. This workshop is one of the program activities which focus on EE financing policy and implementation in ASEAN, as well as discussion variable stakeholders to develop bankable EE projects, considering various phases from proposal preparation, risk analysis, measurement, to monitoring, reporting, and verification this policy. In my opinion, financing recognized as one of the important tools for investment with co-benefits to the effective policy will help reducing the high energy consumption, such as industry, commercial, residential, and transportation sector. This will untap the undeveloped area to be promoted by investment mechanisms and renewing strong efforts to access the energy efficiency financing and providing appropriate physical instruments that in the end will creating the EE market in ASEAN as a whole. Secondly, under this COVID pandemic is challenge and opportunity for our region to recover economics for better sources and technologies for transformation to be more sustainable and better society. Additionally, international cooperation in terms of sharing knowledge, technologies, resources, investment, and finance are needed to achieve to sustainable development goals and smooth transition. So ladies and gentlemen, today we are here together for discussion EE financing policy and implementation in ASEAN, as well as exchanging and learning from presenting valuable informative speakers from AMS and GIZ. And especially Thailand is pleased to share with you with our best practices in EE financing. So I do hope that in the end of the workshop, we will bring about some best practices and recommendations for your country. And I do hope at the end we can achieve our aspiration EE target by 2025 under the APEC Phase 2. Finally, I'm pleased to be with you all again and wish you a very fruitful and successful workshop. Thank you very much and stay safe.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarat. And now I would like to welcome Mr. Sergey Makarov, Principal Advisor AGEP GIZ, to deliver the last welcome remarks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sarat Prakopchat, Coordinator of the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Subsector Network, Director of Energy Regulation Conservation Division, Department of Alternative Energy Development and Efficiency of Thailand. Dr. Nuki Agiyama Tama, Executive Director of ASEAN Center for Energy. Distinguished officials of the Energy Efficiency Subsector Network, representatives of the financial institutions and financial regulatory authorities, colleagues from the private sector and academia, dear participants. First of all, let me thank you for taking your time to join us today for this workshop. ASEAN member states at the end of last year agreed on the second phase of the ASEAN Plan for Action for Energy Cooperation, a cornerstone document for the social and economical development of the ASEAN region, especially very important in our current times of the COVID and the need for COVID recovery. I'm reminded every day when I wake up and switch the lights in my bathroom or start cooking my breakfast that energy brings life to our homes, to our factories, to our cities and our villages. With rapidly growing economies, it becomes of ultimate importance to address sustainability not only of our energy generation, but also, and even more importantly, of our energy consumption. Energy efficiency is the main driver to ensure that our planet remains worth living for us and for our future generations. GIZ and ASEAN German Energy Program that I'm representing in this forum is proud to support ASEAN Center for Energy and relevant subsectoral networks in implementation of ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation. We focus specifically on renewable energy, energy efficiency and conservation, and regional energy policies and planning. Sixth edition of the ASEAN Energy Outlook shows that the region has reached 21% energy intensity reduction in 2018, surpassing the regional target set for 2020. That achievement enabled ASEAN member states to jointly agree on a more ambitious target of 32% by 2025 under APEC Phase 2. To achieve this new and, as I said, more ambitious target, there is a need to accelerate efforts in all levels, including for enhanced support, development and promotion of new energy efficiency technologies and, directly relevant for our workshop today and tomorrow, various financing mechanisms in all sectors of our economy. It requires stable policy frameworks and enabling regulations that will allow to leverage private investments at scale. It all depends on your continuous engagement from the government, financial institutions, academia, and private sector. So again, thank you for joining this workshop, and I'm looking forward for our discussions over these 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sergey. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to have a group photo. So I would like to invite only all the speakers for today's workshop and moderator to turn on your camera, please. Okay. In 3, 2, 1. One more time. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to listen to the overview on Ascent German Energy Program, which will be delivered by Mr. Rizky Fauzianto. He is the GIZ team leader. He completed his bachelor degree with a major in Informatics Engineering at Telkom Institute of Technology Indonesia. He then pursued his master degree in Sustainable Resource Management at Technical University Munich in Germany. At GIZ AGEP, he is responsible for supervising the implementation of all AGEP Phase 1 and Phase 2 activities jointly with ASEAN Center for Energy for regional activities and publications such as the 5th and 6th ASEAN Energy Outlook, ASEAN Regional Grid Integration Training Series, ASEAN Energy Database System, ASEAN Smart Grid and Grid Code Study, and Levelized Cost of Electricity for Renewable Energy Technologies in ASEAN. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Rizky Fauzianto.
Yes, thank you very much, Ms. Nella. Distinguished Dr. Sarat Pratkopchat, Pak Nuki, Sergey, good friends from all financial sectors and project developers, and of course, all other participants. A very good morning to all of you, and I hope you are well despite the pandemic. My name is Rizky, the team leader of ASEAN German Energy Program, or AGEP, and I will speak for maybe around 10 minutes on AGEP overview. Is the slide already shown up here? Is it? Can anyone, Ms. Nella, can you sign me if the slide is already been shown here?
Can you see the slide now?
Yep, thank you very much, Ms. Nella. So yes, since I have only 10 minutes, I try to compress all information into 2 parts. Can you go to the next slide, please? As you can see here, I'm elaborating only those 2 parts into the overview of AGEP. Also, what are our activities into these 3 output ABC? Thank you. Go next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So yes, AGEP or ASEAN German Energy Program actually has been in ASEAN since 14 years ago, and our current projects will last until 2022 with possible extensions. One more slide. Yep. So we actually are jointly implemented by ASEAN Center for Energy and GIZ, and we are funded by the BMZ, or the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, as mentioned by Sergey. The objective is actually to strengthen ACE in its role as a regional competence center of excellence for sustainable energy. But before, in AGE Phase 1 and the previous projects, ASEAN RESP, we also are focusing on many activities for the ASEAN member states. For the current AGE Phase 2, the durations was from 2019 July until next June 2022, and our activities actually in line with the APAEC, the regional plan, on 3 program areas: the energy efficiency, the renewable energy, and regional energy policy and planning. For this activity, it relates to the program area number 4, or energy efficiency. Next slide, please. Yes, so AGEP is, we have around 11 activities, but initially we have 7 activities with the additional 4 activities coming up later on, such as IO7s, biogas, RE financing, and the training modules. But as you can see here, we are dividing into 3 big outputs. The output A is like for the innovative service for the sustainable energy promotions. The output B is more like on data collections, and output C is more on the ACE institutional development. So there are some activities that has been done already, and while for this activity it goes to the A3, the yellow highlight, which is the organization of the regional workshop on EE financings. Next slide, please. So I'll go one by one a little bit shortly. So the first one is about the ASEAN Energy Outlook, which is the flagship of ACE and the ASEAN member states and supported by GIZ since the 3 previous editions. It relates to the APIC program area number 6. The IO6 was actually presented and launched in the AMEM last year, and currently you can also feel free to download it on our website and also ACE website. Next slide, please. Then we go to the A2, which is the R&D nodal network for the research and development on RE in ASEAN. It also relates to the program area number 5 on renewable energy, and we work together with also the AVO and AUN on how to develop the network for the academia and private sectors. And the activity actually produced some potential activities such as database development and dissemination activities. Second one is joint research or proposal development from the academia to the private sectors, capacity development or workshop through the academia, and R&D network funding as well from the academia to the private sector or the governments, and of course the resource sharing such as peer review, personal exchange, or secondment among the academia. It also has been done last time in the R&D in RE Asean a few months ago. Next slide, please. While the third one on the promoting sustainable energy is this one on energy efficiency. AGEP is trying to do the workshop on the e-policy and financing, which is to conduct a multi-stakeholder dialogues to share lesson learned on energy efficiency, business matchmaking, project developers, and also the financial institutions. We have 3 specific discussion topics to exchange, and then to develop the financial proposal, the bankable one, and also the business matchmaking, as I mentioned before. So yeah, look forward for this 2 days workshop, 2 half days workshops for this A3. Next slide, please. And then this will be the new one because the IO6 last year was successfully launched, and currently we are discussing and working with ACE on developing the next one, the 7 ASEAN Energy Outlook. So still currently on the discussion, and we are planning to launch it next year in AMEM in September 2022. Next slide, please. And the last one from the output A is the biogas. It's also related to the REPP, Regional Energy Policy and Planning, on publishing strategic report and thematic issue, which is the biogas. We hope to, on this activity, to map the status, existing technologies on the biogas development, and also to develop the policy recommendation on the regional level, and also gather the insight from the project developers again, and regarding the barriers on biogas development in ASEAN. Next slide, please. Then we go to the output B, which is more on the data collections. This actually also in line with the ACE, one of the ACE great tools, which is the ADS, Ascent Energy Database Systems. And we have 2 sub-activities on B, which is the internal capacity development for ACE and the external capacity development for the IMS, like for the statistician, for the energy modeler. For the B1, for the internal capacity development, we have benchmarking with other similar organizations on how to elevate the database of energy in ACE, and we also have optimized with the consultant to develop more sophisticated systems. The B1 also has been done, while for the B2 now we are working with ACE on disseminating to the ASEAN member states to train the IMS. So yeah, there will be data guideline for the IMS and capacity building for the actors. Yeah, next slide, please. Then we go to the B3, it's on the renewable energy financing, same like here, but it's on RE. We hope to conduct an impact analysis and review study on the governance of RE financing schemes to analyze.
Mr. Rizky, sorry to interrupt, but you have 2 minutes left for your presentation.
Sure.
Thank you.
Just only like a few minutes left. And yeah, to develop policy recommendation and conduct the FGD. Next slide, please.
the project consumption, we conduct the project consumption as well in Bangkok.
And the same for here is the RE training modules. We hope to develop the training modules for the A's so they can identify the gap of RE employments and also the training for the professional for the ASEAN member states. Next slide.
Okay, I will.
And the last one is for the output C, which is the A's in institutional developments. We also have two sub-activities. The C1, which is develop the ACE business plan, and the second one is to implement the ACE capacity development through trainings and SOP. So one of the achievement there is actually we have 42% training participants are women from the ACE. So it's good to show that female is more and more in this sector. Yes, next slide, please. Yes, I guess that will be all. Thank you very much. And I look forward to have the discussion with all of the actors here on the 2 days. And feel free to ask. There's my email also, and also from the A sides, if you have any question on AGEP. Thank you very much and stay healthy. And back to you, Ms. Nela.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rizky Fauzianto, for your excellent presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, now we move on to the next agenda. Is the overview of the workshop objective and agenda, which will be moderated by Dr. Verena Streitfeld. Dr. Verena has over 10 years of consultant and facilitation experience on sustainable energy, policy, and finance in the ASEAN region. As a short-term consultant, she has worked for an organization like the ASEAN Development Bank, World Bank, UNEP, the ASEAN Center for Energy, RENAC, and GIZ. She has worked as a team leader in Indonesia and technical advisor in the Philippines and Thailand on climate change, capacity development, and sustainable cities. Besides energy efficiency, she has a passion for travel and run with her brother an NGO on accessible travel. So, Dr. Verena, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mrs. Nella, and good morning to everybody. I'm very excited to have been asked by ACE and GIZ to moderate this workshop. Having worked on energy efficient financing for a long time, I'm very passionate about the topic, so I'm really excited to guide you through the next 2 half-day workshop sessions. Next slide, please. Yes, so as I think it was already mentioned, the main objectives for this workshop are 4. So first, this day and will mainly focus on providing everybody an overview of the current status of energy efficiency financing in ASEAN, and also to align all of our understanding also on the technicalities of energy efficiency projects with a specific focus on M&V, so measurement and verification. Tomorrow, the workshop will focus on the 2 other objectives, which is to really initiate networking and matchmaking between private project developers and also financial institutions on and unleash energy efficiency investments, hopefully, and also to conduct a multi-stakeholder dialogue around what other tools and methods could be used to further advance energy efficiency finance in ASEAN. Especially, we will introduce an idea for our online-based one-shop platform. Next slide. Next, please. So I just would like to guide you through the agenda of today and tomorrow. So like I mentioned before, we have 2 half days. Today will be in the morning and tomorrow will be in the afternoon. So today we will have 3 sessions. The first session, so before I go any further, actually, we also would like to run a quick polling to also get to know our participants. So you will see in the chat box on the right-hand side, there is a link to a polling questionnaire. I think the team will post it now. And you can fill that in while we are running the session. We will show the results after the first session. So please do that while I'm presenting further. So as I mentioned, this day today has 3 sessions. The first one will focus on energy efficiency financing and the status. We will have 3 presentations, 2 studies on the current state of energy efficiency finance, and then a reflection in Thailand, what the current status there is and what some of the initiatives has caused to be further developed there. And we will also have time for a Q&A after that. Then we will have a 5-minute break to refresh, so also that you don't have to get up during the sessions. We will have a 5-minute break in the middle of the day. And then session 2 is focusing more on the private and international perspective. So we will have presentations from an Escort association, an international development bank, and also an international development organization, followed by a Q&A again. The last session of the day will focus more on technical knowledge exchange to our participants by focusing on M&V for energy efficiency projects. Why? Because M&V is very important in energy efficiency projects to monitor the energy savings that can be made, which are usually integrated into the cash flow of the project. So that's why we would like to share with you a separate session on that. And we will also have some Q&A. In the end of the day, we will also have a quick evaluation form and a quick summary and closing, hopefully to finish by 12:30 Jakarta time today. Next one. So tomorrow, as I mentioned before, it will actually start in the afternoon. So we will start at 1 p.m. So also again, Jakarta time. We will run 2 sessions. And the first session is actually the idea to bring project developers together with financial institutions so they can present their project ideas. And actually, there's an opening for our participants today because we actually had 2 very recent cancellations last night. So we would ask if any of you participants have an idea of an energy efficiency project in the ASEAN region that you would like to pitch to financial institutions, then please send an email to the AGEP team. We will show the email in a second and also in the chat box. And you can please send your idea until 3 p.m. today. If you do it, best to directly prepare perhaps up to 5 slides on the project idea and send it through to us. And we will select 2 that we then also integrate tomorrow in the session. So hope that could also give an opportunity to some of our participants today to participate in that. And then we will have a 5-minute break again on the second day. And then after that, we will more focus on the idea of moving forward through our discussions of today and tomorrow. And we voiced the idea of an online web-based platform to further energy efficiency finance. This will include 2 presentations and an expert comment from ACE, who would like to propose such a web-based platform. We will also have a presentation from Sevilla, who is also an organization working on facilitating the match between energy efficiency project and local institution in ASEAN, and then also have an expert comment. Again, we will have a room for discussion and Q&A. And we would like then also to conduct a brief survey that we will then also use to further follow up on that project idea. And at the end of day 2, we will also have a summary, again, an evaluation form, and then the workshop will be closed. So I hope this gets you as excited as me by seeing what will happen in the next today and tomorrow. And we can directly, I think, proceed then to the next session. I think there will be another slide with an email. So perhaps next? No. So I hope we have posted in the chat the email of, I think it's Pa Sandi for the project idea. So if you have the project idea, please send it through to us and we will let you know by the end of the day if you are selected to present tomorrow in the first session. All right, so without further ado, we can start on the first session, which is the updates on energy efficiency financing status of ASEAN member states. We will have 3 presentations, as I mentioned. First, Mrs. Melati Wulandari will give us a mapping of the energy efficiency finance. Then Pakrio will continue by presenting some results of a project that has been conducted with ACE on energy efficiency finance. And finally, we have a reflection of the case study of Thailand. So next. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Mrs. Melati Wulandari. She is an advisor at the ASEAN German Energy Program, AGEP, which is conducted by GIZ. She has a bachelor in mathematics from ITB and a master's on energy systems from the University of Melbourne. In AGEP, she is supporting the multi-stakeholder dialogues for renewable energy and energy efficiency like we're having today. And one fun fact about her, while she is traveling also for her work, she loves to find sweet treats all over the different countries she's traveling to. Mrs. Wulandari, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Verena. Can the operators share my slide, please? Yes. For Ablaza Global, can you share my slide? Yes, thank you. So good morning, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, all the participants in this workshop. My name is Melati. I'm the advisor from the AGEP GIZ. Today, I will be presenting some of the key findings from our publications. One of report called The Mapping of Energy Efficiency Financing in ASEAN. This is jointly developed together by ACE and GIZ under the AGEP program. Next slide, please. Yes, I'll be starting with my outline. I will start with the introduction, just a few overview on the ASEAN region, and of course our sacred document, the APEC, and I will be explaining a little bit about the current situation on the EE financing in ASEAN, the current status of EE, the policy frameworks, and all the financing schemes implemented in ASEAN member states, and also we have some example for the stakeholder mapping, and closed by some regional challenges that we identify in the report. Next slide, please. Yes. So starting from the overview of the ASEAN region. So ASEAN is an economic zone of around 650 million people, which covers about 8.5% of world's population, and with a combined GDP of $3 trillion in 2018, with the growing on average of 5.3% per year in the period of 2000 until 2018, which this makes us the 6th largest economy in the world. And the demand for energy in the region is immense due to this economic growth. So we are also projecting future ASEAN energy demand in 2040 is expected to reach more than about 2.5 times from 2017 level in order to meet this economic target. Next slide, please. Yes, and of course, when we talk about this region, energy in this region, we also need to talk about our sacred blueprint guiding document called the ASEAN Plan of Action on Energy Cooperation. So we are now in the APEC Phase 2 for the period of 2021 to 2025. And in this APEC, there are 7 program areas. There is power grid, gas pipeline, clean coal, RE, and EE, also energy policy and planning, and civilian nuclear energy. And under all these 7 program areas, each of them has specific targets, while for the ENC program areas, we have the target to reduce energy intensity on the total primary energy supply by 32% in 2025. Next slide, please. Yes, so after knowing our big regional target, we want to know where are we now. So so based on the ASEAN Energy Database System, we found out that we are currently reached 21.8% of the EI reduction in 2019, based on the 2005 level. And this is actually surpassing the aspirational target of 20% set for 2020. And so therefore, ASEAN decided to set a more aggressive EI target to 32% based on 2005 level. And, when based on the 6 ASEAN Energy Outlook as well, like we can see that if we're doing nothing, if we are being conventional on our EE efforts, if we're just going to achieve our national target, we will only reach about 29% of reduction target by 2025. So therefore, we need a more ambitious, strong efforts in EE to achieve this new target. And also, I believe that financing is one of the key important aspects to increase our EE development. Next slide, please. Yes. So in this report, we try to map and identify the different policy frameworks implemented in the ASEAN region. And as we can see in the summary table, in all 10 ASEAN member states and across the different sectors, the region is usually more focused or more have policy frameworks in the industry and commercial residential sector, followed by the building sectors, while the transport sector has limited policy frameworks on EE. So in the report, you will see different policy frameworks in place for each ASEAN member states. I'm just going to mention some of them, like in the Philippines, we have the ENC roadmap, and in Singapore, we also have the Energy Conservation Act, and in Vietnam, there's VNEP, and the Vietnam National Energy Efficiency Program as well. So you can check this report to see more in-depth and more detailed policy in place. And next slide, please. Yeah, we also map the different financing scheme, the various financing scheme in place in all 10 ASEAN member states. And as you can see in the summary table, we have the most popular and commonly used by the ASEAN member states are the incentives and the dedicated EE grants, while some countries also has the dedicated loans, equity, and guarantee. So in the report, we mention all different financing schemes in place. I'm just going to mention several of them. Like in the Malaysia, they have the green technology financing schemes and also some energy audit conditional grant, the EACG, and also there is EPCF, the Energy Performance Contracting Fund, which uses government guarantees to make projects more bankable and attractive to investors. And in Malaysia, there's also the Sustainability Achieved via Energy Efficiency, which is SAFE, which uses rebates as a cost-effective mechanism to promote the adoption of efficient technologies within households. And some examples maybe from Singapore also has various schemes for the building sector mostly focused, like the different green mark incentive schemes, the GMIS, also the building retrofit energy efficiency financing called BRIEF, and the Energy Efficiency Fund or E2F for the industrial sector. And like in Thailand, also there are several different schemes like the famous ENCON Fund, the Energy Conservation and Promotion Fund, which collects revenue by taxing the petroleum fuel. And also in Vietnam, we have the Vietnam Environment Protection Fund and National Technology Innovation Fund. Next
Hi,
slide.
Ms. Mati, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
You have 2 minutes left for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Salas. Next slide, please. Yes, in this report, we also try to map different stakeholders that is working in the energy efficiency financing in each member states. You know, the stakeholder consists of different ministries in energy and finance, also development banks from corporate ESCOs and utility companies and other organizations. So in our report, you will see each mapping for each ASEAN member states. I'm just going to take example of one of the map that we did in our report is for Singapore. And here you can see as well in the mapping, well, the coordination in the Singapore is quite tight, and they have the synergized program and activities, so they're not overlapping each other. Next slide, please. Yes, we also identify a few regional challenges, like some common barriers that are faced by most AMS, like probably in Brunei, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, they have more limited regulatory frameworks and financing supporting schemes in place. And also like Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand, maybe if they have already a financing scheme established. However, the implementation of the supports kind of a bit hindered due to the limited information or understanding available for public. And there also we identify some financial institutions, for example, still have the limited technical understanding of the ANC projects and its associated risk. So this makes them a bit reluctant in providing loans for these project developers or ESCOs. And the more detailed barriers and opportunities will also be discussed in the next session by Mr. William Hudson. Next slide, please.
Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Melati, your 10 minutes is up.
Yeah, this is my last slide. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, for my last slide, so I'm just going to encourage you to check our publications, the Mapping of Energy Efficiency Financing in the AGEP website, and also we have other financing-related publications that you can check about the financing guideline and some best practice that we identify from all 10 ASEAN member states. Next slide, please. Yep, I think that is all from my side. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mrs. Wulandari, for the very insightful presentation about what AGEP has already done in terms of providing an overview of energy efficiency financing mechanism. Without further, I just would like to remind all the participants, if you have any question, just put them into the chat box. We will try to address them in the end of the session. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our next speaker, which is Pa Rio Silatonga. He's a research analyst at the ASEAN Center for Energy. He has been already over 9 years with ACE and always significantly pushed for energy efficiency financing models and an exchange of knowledge on this topic. Also in accordance with the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, APEC. And also he has led several studies on green building management, energy management, ESCO business model, energy efficiency finance mechanism, and others. As a fun fact, he likes to sing and actually has been several times asked by his college students to sing in their plenaries. Mr. Pagrio, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Verena, for your kind introduction. Yeah, good morning, everyone. As introduced by Verena, I'm Rio from the ASEAN Center for Energy. Sorry. Can you please share my presentation slide? Yeah, so today I would like to present regarding the outcomes or the summary of the ACE-JAIP Energy Efficiency Financing Program that we have implemented in 2018-2019, and including the next plan. So today's my presentation include some push factor. I mean, why the energy efficiency financing mechanism is critical in ASEAN. Include an ASEAN energy landscape, and also some goals under the APEC 2016-2025. Next slide, please. So just want to share a little bit regarding the ASEAN energy landscape from the perspective of total primary energy supply TPS, and also TFEC. This is also one of the push factors why energy efficiency financing mechanism is critical to be implemented in the region. So if you can see the data from the supply side, ASEAN total primary energy supply will be 2.3 times higher in 2020 under the baseline scenario, rising from only 625 MTOE in 2017 to 1,589 MTOE in 2040. So most of this growth will be coming from fossil fuels. So this is kind of a challenge to energy landscape in ASEAN as well. And from the TFEC perspective, we can see on the right slide of the present PPT slide. So ASEAN is projected to increase by 2.5 times by 2040, rising to 920 MTOE, compared to the 2000 figure of 375 MTOE. So with no policy intervention, fossil fuel will be continues to be the dominant energy supply in the region. So more stringent energy efficiency measures supported by regional corporations will push more energy saving. Next slide, please. Alignment against the background of the landscape and also alignment to the APEC goals and target on energy efficiency. With ASEAN that has a population 643 million in 2007, based on the data 2017, and with the GDP 7.7 trillion in 2017, and then also annual growth rate of 5% from 2005 to 2017. And as I mentioned, the FFC reached 375 MTOE in 2017. Against this backdrop, ASEAN actually has showed a clear target as the region on energy efficiency. So under the APEC 2016-2025, there are two targets, 2% by 2020 and 32% by 2025, with a baseline 2005. So the outcome-based strategy also have been identified and also emphasized under the plan, including the harmonization on e-standard, building codes, Escort, participation, and financial institution, including in transport and industry. The overall impact of the policy is expected to reach saving in TFC 32% by 2040 compared to business as usual scenario. Next, please. So talking about the ASEAN JAIF e-financing mechanism for project implementation program, just to show you the framework how this project actually been designed and approved. So we have consulted the project under the group of stakeholders in ASEAN, including ESSSN, and also SOME, senior official on energy meeting, including the AMEM. And also we conducted a project kickoff. I think the first workshop in Bangkok on 17 to 20 December, attended also by the chair of the ESSSN, including the technical working group members of the e-financing mechanism in ASEAN, ACE, and also international organization. And also the projects obviously supportive to APEC goals, especially to promote the cooperation of the innovative e-financing mechanism for investment and implementation of e-project in the region. Next, please. This is the overall objective of the ASEAN Cooperative Financing Mechanism, ASE-JAIF program. So the overall of the program objectives include identify and share information on high performance financing scheme for e-project implementation in ASEAN. Also analysis and estimate the impacts and potential of the identified financing scheme of ASEAN member state, including assist participating ASEAN member state in designing the high performance financing scheme, develop practice-oriented policy brief that can be shared among ASEAN member state. The rationale behind of the program implementation, as we can see from the RGAP study on energy efficiency policy mapping, there is still existing gaps on e-financing mechanism in ASEAN due to the limited awareness, lack of financial knowledge, lack of multi-stakeholders meeting, including lack of information. That is the case why this project actually designed in order to address the barriers on the development of e-financing mechanism among ASEAN member states. Next, please. So just want to show you the outcomes of the this project that has been implemented on July 2018 until May 2019. So this project actually funded by the ASEAN Integrated Fund, or JAIF, Japan ASEAN Integrated Fund, JAIF, and implementer is ASEAN Energy. So we conducted 2 workshops in 2018 and 2019 with diverse, with variety of stakeholders, including the technical working group of the e-financing mechanism from ASEAN, including the international organization. So during the workshop, we conduct some capacity building, information sharing, and exchange views on e-financing mechanism, including consultation to the study that we conducted under um, the project. Next slide, please. So, study on energy-based efficiency financing. This is my next slide. So under the JAI program, we actually conducted a study in addition to the study that supported by, sorry, I think there is unsynchronized slides. Just want to check with the organizer. Are we now in study on energy efficiency financing slide?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So, so the JIPE actually supported, conducted a study on financing mechanism. We published and also endorsed by the stakeholders. So the study consists of e-financing best practices, national e-financing mechanism recommendation, including regional e-financing mechanism.
Sorry, Mr. Rio, to interrupt. You have 2 minutes left for your presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I will try to be quickly. Next slide, please. So on the project approach, including we assess, based on the multi-perspective assessment, and also to identify the proposed initiative for energy efficiency financing cooperation in ASEAN. In parallel, we also include expert inputs and conduct capacity building and exchange of information, including technical in-depth advisory to help ASEAN member states in designing the energy efficiency financing mechanism. Next, please. So from the multi perspective, we assess 3 factors: externality, national mechanism, including for the externality, international support, pressures, and national. We are looking on the subsidy on the energy prices and financial system, including mechanism for public and private in ASEAN member state. Next slide, please. So from the program, we have identified and we divided into 2 groups of ASEAN member states based on the assessment of the current status and also multi-perspective result. So group 1 consists Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos. Cambodia integrate finance into energy management training, and Myanmar energy efficiency law in 2020, including capacity building of central bank, and Laos to development fund and tax incentive, and also capacity building center of central banks. Next slide, please. Yeah, for the group 2 of ASEAN member state consists of Brunei Darussalam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. More of this country actually are looking into public to private e-financing mechanism, as you can see on the table. Next, please. So for the regional approaches, so we actually have some outcomes. We submitted some proposal based on the assessment and also consultation with the ASEAN member state. So we submitted Switch Asia proposal on Escort, carbon database, a business matchmaking platform conceptualization, and energy saving insurance supported by IDB. Next, please. And key outputs, just to summarize again, to reiterate, to submit the proposal, summaries of best investment case study, study report with the country analysis and proposal for each ASEAN member state, and 4 regional proposal for Escort, carbon database platform, and energy saving insurance. Next, please. The development of the process, it is very according to the opinion of the member state, it is very beneficial for exchange of information, evaluation mechanism, and also networking among the financial institution and also policymakers. Next, please. Recommendations.
Your time is up. Please wrap up your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, I think this is the last slide. Can just get this through and just next, please. I think this is the just recommendation. Okay, awareness of ASEAN members, awareness for the ASEAN member state, including Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia, through more exchange of information, and Laopedia, Cambodia, more legal framework advisory and energy planning integration with E. Next, please. I think the thank you slide. Last one. Yeah, this is I think next. Yeah, next, please. Next, please. I think this is not the updated one. Okay, that is my slide, my last slide. And thank you for your attention. Yeah, back to Verena.
Thank you, Pak Rio, for this very interesting presentation, and sorry to be rushed along a little bit. I think it was a good project, the JIVE project, to raise awareness among the ASEAN member states on energy efficiency finance, and hopefully some of the work can be continued. So the next session, I would like to invite Mr. Acharya Changchai to present on the case study on Thailand. Mr. Acharya Changchai is an engineer for the Division of Energy Regulation and Conservation at the Department of Alternative Energy Development and Energy Efficiency in Thailand, the DED. There he is in charge to provide and administer financial support for the energy conservation as depicted by the law. And he's also an expert on energy management, standards and labeling, and green building. He also a bachelor in engineering, and he also has a master's in energy management from the New York Institute of Technology in the US. Mr. Acharya Changchai, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Verena. Can show my slides? All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Acharya Changchai from DD. Next slide, please. So my presentation today will consist of this topic. So I will introduce you to the ENCON Fund, Energy Conservation Promotion Fund. Our program is the Energy Efficiency Revolving Fund, Escort Revolving Fund, and Board of Investment or BOI tax scheme. And the last one is the new project that we are waiting for implementation today, this year. Next slide, please. For the Energy Conservation Promotion Funds or ENCON Fund is established under the Thailand Energy Conservation and Promotion Act 1992. It's a tool for Thai government as a key financial mechanism for support energy efficiency and renewable energy development project. Actually, it's available for public and private sector, including research, development, demonstration, education and training, and awareness and public relation. The fund aims to address the issue of the access to finance, which has been a key barriers to scaling up EE and RE project in Thailand. Next slide, please. The ENCON fund is coming from the petroleum or the oil tax. So the wholesale price will include oil fund and ENCON funds as shown in the pictures. The oil fund is using as a price stabilization instrument to control the local oil price and to avoid the fluctuation of the global oil price, while the ENCON fund is using for investment on EE measures. Next slide, please. So recently, the 0.1 baht has collect from the oil tax as the ENCON fund approximately 0.3 cent. Next slide, please. And on this slide, I will present about our program on energy efficiency revolving fund, as known as the soft loan, given through the financial institution that participating in the project. The target group is including first one, the industrial and commercial building. Second one, the new energy conservation building or new construction based on Thailand Building Energy Code criteria. And the third one, energy service company. The loan is capped. I would like to give you some details. The loan is capped about at 50 million baht for one project. The bank shall give the interest rate for the enterprise at the maximum 3.5 baht per year, and the payment must be made within 5 years. And the project should have the payback period less than 7 years. This program was implementing since 2003 until 2019, consists of 6 phases, plus the total loan was roughly about 12,000 million baht. Next slide, please. And this is the bank that participate in the project. Next slide, please. For the target group, that usually we focus on the designated factory and building under the Energy Conservation Promotion Act. So if the factory or the building use one of the following measures that state by the law, so we are one of the criteria that we will approve the project. Next slide, please. If they are the new construction of the energy conservation building, will be based on Thailand Building Energy Code or BEC criteria, which is consists of 9 types of new building. Next slide, please. And also the energy efficiency project implementing by the Escort. So the Escort should have the register by the Institute of Industrial Energy, the Federal of Thailand Industry, or FTI. Also have the energy performance contract and the MNV, measurement and verification. Next, please. So this is the kind of the process that we are approved. Actually, if you see can hear the bank, after the company submit the proposal, the bank will analyze the project and then giving our department or DD to approval, and then we'll, after the project approved, implemented, and we'll have the payback period, and company will pay back the soft loan to the bank by 5 years. Next page. So this is the key achievement. It was 533 projects approved by this fund, and we have the about total energy saving 3,780 million baht. Next slide, please. So the second one we call the Escort revolving fund. Actually, this program actually organized by, implemented by 2 fund managers, which will be target to factories and building with high saving potential but lack of funding and have no collateral for funding procurement. It's shown here. There are 6 schemes. I will go roughly. Next slide, please. There are 3 popular schemes that have been implemented. The first one is equity investment. The second one, equipment leasing, and the third one is Escort venture capital. The details can see in this slide. Next, please. And the Escort revolving fund has been implemented 4 phases already since we have implemented one phase. The budget is about 500 million baht.
Hello, Mr. Acharya. Your time is 2 minutes left.
Okay.
For your
Next, please.
Thank you.
So this is the key achievement for the revolving fund. It has been 149 projects approved. Next, please. The last one is about broad investment tax scheme. We have the collaboration with another agency to get the incentive for Escort project. The project right now has been implemented about 15 projects already approved and get the intensive. Next, please. So this is the concept project that we are going to implement this year. We call the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Investment Loan Subsidy. Next, please. The idea actually subsidy 3% of the market price, the market interest rate for 3 years for the bank. And second one is exempt loan guarantee fee for SME with the Thai Credit Guarantee Corporation for 1% for 3 years. Next, please. This is the detail of the concept. Next, please. And expectation of the benefit. Next, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Acharya Changchai, for sharing that very insightful presentation about the energy efficiency finance status in Thailand. I'm very happy it's so far advanced, and that there's also a new financing mechanism coming, as you just introduced in the last slide. So I think we have a couple of minutes for a question and answer session. So far I have seen 3 questions. One of them was perhaps more of a general question, perhaps to all the panel speakers, about the insurance schemes for energy efficiency and renewable energy programs. Are there already any in the ASEAN region? And what is actually the benefit for the insurance company to issue such insurance? I guess it's similar to a guarantee mechanism, but yes, if any of the panelists would like to jump in on this question. I think, Pagrio, it's a little bit related to also the GIS.
Let me try to
yes.
respond. If that's okay.
Please.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to respond to the question. According to my presentation, I also highlighted some barriers for energy efficiency financing investment, either in public and private. Especially for barriers to private, I think the insurance very much useful to address the barriers on investment on energy efficiency. If you see the barriers, as I highlighted, and also from the AGEP study, it's not just lack of awareness, but from financial perspective, they also kind of seeing some benefit investment like period and also high return of investment, and also I think mentioned by Acharya, even the public fund, they also putting some scheme on collateral basis. So the insurance actually able to address the barriers on those things that I mentioned, especially for the collateral and also financial performance, in order to convince the private investment or financial institution to invest on energy efficiency. The benefits of insurance that we actually discussed, identified with our e-financing mechanism. Maybe other speakers would like to add on the point. That's
okay. Perhaps I would just like to ask on the Thai example that you just mentioned, the collaboration with the guarantee mechanism. Was it difficult to collaborate with the Thai guarantee mechanism committee to include energy efficiency as one of the items to be guaranteed? Perhaps Mr. Acharya Changchai?
In the guarantee scheme, actually, we are going to implement this year because constraint of the budget that we cannot get all of the soft loan to the bank, and then we just only have the subsidy only 3% to the interest rate for the bank, and then another part is for the guarantee credit, which is actually for the SME particularly, they don't have the asset to be a guarantee, and it's difficult for them to get the loan or the soft loan from the bank. And we actually have the credit guarantee. One of the government agency already provide the guarantee credit. We just give some the 1% of the fee to help this agency to be implement the project.
Okay, so basically that the SMEs reduce their fee that they have to pay to the credit guarantee by 1%.
Correct.
Okay, and so could then SME also be an ESCO company then in Thailand? Because some of them are rather small, right?
Yes. Actually, in Thailand nowadays, the ESCO company particularly have the small project. Basically, because we have the ESCO agency that if you want to be the ESCO company, you have to register with the government agency before the project implementation. But nowadays, most of the project that we approve, usually the big project. And now we try to get the opportunity for the small project that try to get involved with the another involvement.
Thank you very much. I think there was another question raised about public-private partnership projects and how that can be used also for energy efficiency projects. In particularly if there are 1 or 2 business cases on this in Indonesia. You know, if there's like a business case for PPP, does anybody have any knowledge on that? Perhaps if Pak Rio, I mean, I could perhaps briefly jump in because I'm based in Indonesia. So I understand currently there has been some projects developed for PPP on street lights, on energy efficiency LED street lights. And I know one is running in Solo and I think Lombok. And there has been, they have been, I think the Solo project at the moment is in the process of tendering. And I think Lombok is still in the development stage. So I know that that has been developed. I am not totally familiar with all the details. I don't know, Pak Rio, do you know a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you, Frena. Yeah,
thank you, Frena.
Sorry, I think so.
I think he has some background noise, but I think he will jump in later. Perhaps, yes?
Can you hear me, please? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. I think you highlighted the cases of Indonesia on public-private partnership. Indeed, a public partnership is more easy than for infrastructure on energy efficiency compared to the public and also private funding. Yeah. In the case of the Indonesia, I think there is a project on study. I think this is under the funding infrastructure of international development, but I'm not really sure about the detail of the project. But I do agree that public partnership, I think, is also very useful. Financial scheme that need to be explored. I think this is something that we have also discussed with the JAI program. Also, we Vietnam proposed assistance to design the PPP. Public partnership mechanism. I think we have assisted Vietnam, and then we proposed the initiative and put in the documentation. So that is my feedback, Prerna.
Yes. Perhaps I also have just now came in another more general question, perhaps also for Mrs. Wulandari. Basically, the question is how to make energy efficiency programs more effective, as the main driver in cost reduction is cost reduction, but the electricity tariff in ASEAN is still relatively low. So it's very much driven by the government initiatives. For EE to be success in ASEAN, the consumer must play a bigger role, and the EE policy development should integrate all these factors in. I don't know if you would like to perhaps make a comment about that statement.
Yes, although the electricity tariff is as mentioned, relatively low now. But I think we cannot only rely on the government initiatives nowadays. Like we also have many stakeholders from the financing institutions, from the private sectors, and some donors and international funds that is also are interested in supporting projects in this region. So we just need maybe a good platform, a good information sharing in order to move this information and to make it available for the project developers. So I think we have a good potential in this region as well.
Thanks. Perhaps one last question. I think this is more technically towards Thailand again, Mr. Antaria Chanchai. The question is, for the energy efficiency grant that you're offering, is there a range of budget that would be given? I'm not sure if this is specifically to the last project that you described or also to the broader EEIF or the Escort fund. Do you have a specific budget on the EE projects that you provide the grant for?
Actually, as I mentioned in the earlier of my slide, actually we have the Escort fund regulated by the Energy Conservation Promotion Act, which is the grant is actually collect from the oil tax. So every time we use the oil or petroleum in Thailand, one of the tax we collect into the Escort fund and use it to implement the energy efficiency and renewable energy project.
So and then for your, I think for your sub projects, you also have certain limits of budget, right? Like the maximum amount that they can apply for.
Actually, yes. The Escort fund not only provide for the Ministry of Energy, but also provide for the institution or private sector or the like university to implement the project. But they will have the some budget allowance like to be implemented of each year. For example, in this year we don't have a lot of the budget provide for the energy efficiency and renewable energy project. So we have to change the theme or the scheme into the project that according with the fund given from the.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps one last question from the chat room that I just picked up, perhaps to everybody, but perhaps you could start. Because the question was, why are we not focusing more on the housing sector in terms of buildings and energy efficiency? So, for example, you also mentioned in the, I think one of the projects, the EIF, the main requirements is that they have a green building code compliance. And I'm not sure in Thailand, you already have an energy efficiency building code also for the housing sector. And has that been a consideration before? And perhaps after, if some of the other panelists could also answer for more other ASEAN countries. Thank you.
For Thailand case, actually, the sector that we are looking for is a designed factory or designed building, which is the building that consume a lot of energy, and this is under the laws. So that's what we are focused. Actually, for the housing, we also have another division that are looking on particularly on the housing of the small sector that they are not the building or factory under the laws. So for further information, I will looking for the information and we will provide to you later.
Perfect. Perhaps you can put it into the chat box. That would be great. And also the other participants can all see it. Okay, if I think that would like to wrap up then the question and answer session of the first session. Thank you so much to all the panelists for your very interesting presentations. As said before in the chat box, we will share all the presentations after the workshop. And then without further ado, we will have a short break, but I would also like to ask perhaps before Ablaza Global to quickly show our polling results of the participants from this morning, if that's possible. Can you please share the results of the polling from this morning before we go into the break? All right. So on which country do you come from? So we can see Indonesia is dominant today. And but we also have participants from all over ASEAN, and also in particular perhaps high in the Philippines, Malaysia. And then from where are you coming from? So we see a strong trend from researching institutions, but also project developers and public officers and others. So now I would be interested to know what others are. But okay, perfect. So I hope that everybody also gets a little overview of where the people are coming from. So thank you very much. And now we have a 5-minute break and we will start again in about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I would like to start again the next session, which is the session 2. Can we have the next slide, please? Perfect. So the next session will focus more on energy efficiency finance from the non-policies perspective. So we have from a representative from the Asian Pacific Escort Alliance. We also have the Asian Development Bank and Carbon Trust, the International Development Organization, who will share their insights into energy efficiency finance and ASEAN in this session. Just to mention again, so each presenter will have 10 minutes. We'll be reminded 2 minutes before the presentation ends. And also a reminder to the participants, please ask any questions that you have in the chat box, and we will try to address them in the end of the session. We want to avoid that you unmute your microphone because we have too many participants and it would probably confuse the session. So please put all your questions into the chat box. And there's also, if you can't access the chat box, we've also shared another link to access those via another polling tool. All right, so then perhaps without further ado, I would like to introduce the first speaker of the next session. Next slide, please. So Mr. Alexander Ablaza, he is the co-chair of the Asia-Pacific ESCO Industrial Alliance, APAIA. He also runs his own consulting and ESCO company, P2, in the Philippines. I would like to say he's one of the champions on energy efficiency really in ASEAN, and he has tried for the last 20 years to push in the Philippines for the energy efficiency law, which finally came into place in 2019. So yeah, I think he's one of the champions on this field to really effortlessly push for it. He has 36 years of experience on energy efficiencies in clean energy technology in 14 ASEAN markets. And he has contributed to pledging $3 billion deployed in the sector on clean energy technology and energy efficiency. Now he's also recently become more of an advisor across the Middle East and also ASEAN to further unleash the energy efficiency capital flows. One of the fun factors, he has 2 beautiful daughters with 17 years apart. One is changing the world by pushing for RE investments in Asia, and the other one by Minecrafting and Taekwondo. So please, Mr. Alexander Ablaza, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Verena. It's exciting to always reconnect with the ASEAN and the GIZ. So I'll be speaking very quickly on the need to bridge Southeast Asia's energy efficiency capital gap, and we will need to get out of our comfort zone and do things differently on the road to 2040. Next slide. I would say 60, but I think this has jumped up to 66% of the world's $33 to $36 billion ESCO market sits in Asia. So right now, I count at least $23 billion a year in ESCO business within Asia. Next slide. I had the blessing of convening 10 country ESCO associations, and I won't read the busy slide, but it's all about creating a platform of knowledge, capital, and capacity building sources from the mature markets to the younger nascent markets in the region. Next slide. I also represent and co-founded the Global ESCO Network. In working across the globe now, I represent Asia Pacific. Our mission right now is to incorporate an ESCO market intervention in the nationally determined contributions of countries under their Paris climate obligations. Next slide. I did a study last year, and we estimate based on IEA's Sustainable Development Scenario projections that Southeast Asia as a region will need $892 billion in energy efficiency investments. So this is a huge, we're talking about close to $1 trillion in energy efficiency capital gap. Next slide. And I would say that only a third or close to $300 billion would be through the comfort zone of self-financed government appropriations or budgets, bank finance through and lease finance, and other on-balance sheet modalities. But I'd like to theorize right now, and I'm testing this hypothesis across many Asian markets, that two-thirds or close to $600 billion will have to be outside the balance sheet of the end user, whether it's a building, a factory, a government facility, or even a household or a small business. It will have to be outside the balance sheet. And how can this be achieved? By enabling, growing, scaling, replicating ESCO performance contracting, uh, PPP transactions, joint venture with the state-owned enterprises, large-scale government entities or government programs, and other off-balance sheet modalities. So the huge lion's share of our capital gap is from off-balance sheet. Next slide. And let's talk about the persistent gaps. I think the number one is that most MSMEs and ESCOs, even until this very day, have very limited access to debt finance. And I would say that 98% of ESCOs across developing Asia do not have suitable access to bank lending. They may borrow, but they will max out their credit limit after 3 projects. Energy efficiency consumption threshold for energy efficiency obligations under the laws, ENERCON laws or EE laws are very low, are very high. In Singapore, it's still 54 terajoules a year. In Indonesia, it's 6,000 tons of oil equivalent, although there are plans to bring it down to 4,000, which is still very high, tons of oil equivalent. Next, there's an overly delayed phase out of energy subsidies in almost all forms of energy, especially electricity. ESCO project investments need access to fiscal incentives because they're investing in premises that they neither own nor lease. ESCO markets have no equity and guarantee providers. In Ms. Wulandri's presentation, I just see 2 countries providing little bits of equity. ESCO accreditation systems need to be established or strengthened. ESCO sector needs to build capacities big time. And ESCO government procurement and budgeting regulations often disallow ESCO contracts. Next slide. So it's really about shifting from the comfort zone of on balance sheet, working with banks, working with capital budgets, and moving them and scaling up using off balance sheet modalities, ESCOs, PPPs, build, operate, transfer, joint venture, portfolio investments, funds, and the like. Next slide. So when a young nascent ESCO market is beginning, it starts with pure EE technology solutions provider and having building or facility owners purchase their technology services or solutions without capital flowing through the EE technology solutions provider. And that's what we call self-financed EE, early days of ESCO market. Next slide. When the financial sector matures and they are able now to lend to more end users, we start with the guaranteed savings model on the left-hand side of the screen. So debt capital is now flowing through the end user. And we have the ESCOs performing the services and providing performance guarantees. Now, when the financial sector gets a little bit more mature and they now have more ESCO-friendly lending, then we can shift now to the shared savings model as the next growth stage. The shared savings now has the ESCO as the borrower or conduit of debt capital. Next slide. But this is something that I now recommend and try to structure for separate governments. I recommended this for the government of Singapore. I've recommended this for the government of the Philippines. I did something like this in the early days before EESL was created in India. It's really about creating a third-party investor. And it could be either a project company, a private fund, an equity provider, a super ESCO, a state-owned enterprise, or even a portfolio investor, flowing equity capital, not debt, to a portfolio of several ESCO contracts and now being the conduit of equity and debt providers. So this is a new structure that we should now look at in many of the ASEAN markets. Next slide. So I'll talk about this barrier removal. I mentioned 8 market barriers, but I offer 8 recommendations. First, let's review and amend energy efficiency laws and capture more mandatory action from end users. Number 1 is to lower the consumption thresholds before they start to get obligations. 2, accelerate the phase out of subsidies. If that cannot be done fast enough, then governments and the development community should provide viability gap funding for EE portfolios. 3, de-risk bank lending with risk-sharing facilities and more guarantee mechanisms, flow more insurance and guarantee products. 4th, design, establish, and enable equity providers, ESCO guarantee funds, public or private, and facilitate the entry of insurance products. Next slide. 5th, create...
Mr. Alexander, sorry to interrupt. You have 2 minutes left.
Got it. Thank you so much. To create or strengthen ESCO accreditation, registration, or certification systems. This does not exist in many countries. The next 6th is to intensify training and certification of energy managers, measurement and verification professionals, and other EE and ESCO professionals, and to develop industry standard performance contracting templates. 7th, government EE subsidies or tax incentives should be rolled out to ensure improved equity returns or debt service or to de-risk long-term capital investment. And the 8th and last recommendation I would offer, correct government procurement regulations to allow procurement and budgeting for ESCO performance contracts, PPP transactions, and joint venture agreements. Next slide. So 3 takeaways from this presentation. Southeast Asia will need close to $1 trillion in energy efficiency capital in the next 2 decades by removing barriers to innovative financial modalities. Second, a robust EE and ESCO policy and incentive framework and a stronger ESCO industry can flow debt, equity, and guarantees to propel ESCO market growth. Last, make government the largest buyer of ESCO performance services. China and the US became the 2 largest ESCO markets because government bought their services. Next slide. So I thank you, and I'm looking forward to your questions. Salamat, terima kasih, come on, kapkun krap.
Thanks, Alec, for this very enthusiastic and energetic presentation, as always. And I also really like your new ideas about how to get off balance sheet financing working via the ESCO model. So thanks a lot. So for the next presentation, I would like to invite Daniela Schmidt. She is the energy specialist at the Asian Development Bank in the energy division. She worked for different organizations, also in emerging economies on energy infrastructure projects, and such as Suntech, International Renewable Energy Agency, and ADB. The focus of her work is always to support countries, power utilities, and businesses with knowledge and new approaches, how to advance to a net zero carbon emission economy. She thinks that this transformation specifically should happen because of clear, predictable, and proven concepts so that the investors can make their investments. So one fun fact about her, she loves dancing and currently exploring Argentinian tango. Mrs. Daniela Schmidt, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I just would like to start by saying, so ADB, we are not just financing solutions. We are actually also a knowledge bank, so it's very important for us to identify also new business models, which can then be scaled in order to achieve impact. So let me present you with one latest business model we identified as a potential idea to move forward. So households in Asia, or no, in ASEAN actually, will buy 84 million air conditioners in the next 10 years. Many air conditioners will be bought for the first time, which is great because that means that more and more people can benefit from cooling in terms of quality of life, well-being, and also productivity. But here's the thing. 7 out of 10 air conditioners could be very inefficient. Many households choose to buy air conditioners that consume 42% more electricity, even though other efficient models are already in the market. So why is that? Because efficient air conditioners cost twice as much. And many households can either not afford or do not want to pay for efficient air conditioners at that price. So basically, even if somebody can save electricity over the lifetime of the product, what matters is what basically households can afford or want to pay for today. Now imagine 57 million inefficient air conditioners that consume 42% more electricity. What would that mean? Yeah, so we did some calculations as an example for Thailand. And we identified that basically if households continue to buy inefficient air conditioners, in 10 years from now, the country will need to supply 50,500 gigawatt hours of electricity more every year, just for inefficient cooling. That means, in other words, 6% more electricity every year, just for inefficient cooling of residential buildings. Now we have to think about where is that electricity coming from? What would that electricity cost? Could that electricity be supplied from clean energy sources? If not, again, in the case of Thailand, we calculated 7.5 million tons more of carbon dioxide emissions just for inefficient cooling every year. So that is basically going opposite direction we actually want to go to. Then in addition, we have to think about what would that cost to distribute that electricity. Building, operating, maintaining, and distributing that capacity will be expensive because that's capacity that can only be supplied during short periods, during peak hours. So we can recognize that there is a problem on the horizon and it's coming very fast. So we need to find a solution. We need to find a way to make efficient cooling accessible to households, to help households to overcome that upfront cost, that higher upfront cost of efficient air conditioners. So we started working months ago with a power utility in Thailand to look for a possible approach. And we initially started looking at different energy efficiency models around the world. And they all have their limitations. But then what we did was looking at telecom companies. So now you probably ask yourself, why telecom companies? Think about that telecom companies have a very successful business model of providing the latest smartphone technologies to million of customers. So affordability or willingness to pay seems to be less a problem. So how do they do that? They use data, they use digital platforms, and they use effective payment plans. So we thought about like, okay, could a power utility do the same, but for efficient air conditioners? Because similar to telecom companies, power utilities serve millions of customers already with electricity. And basically, they could use that relationship to also provide efficient cooling services. Then another very important advantages your power utilities have is that they have a huge amount of historic data points. For example, monthly electricity consumption, monthly electricity bill payments, geographical location. And they could use the data to basically profile their customers and offer them the best products. And they could also use that data, for example, as a proxy to assess the creditworthiness of customers. And that brings me to the next point. Could power utilities, for example, use on-bill payment plans where, for example, households would get a credit from a bank to cover the higher upfront cost, and then use basically the electricity bill to repay the credit? And then could power utilities build digital platforms Yes, they could, right? For example, a digital platform could be very helpful to connect households, customers with manufacturers and other service providers of air conditioners, and basically provide a one-stop shop service solution, which is very convenient for customers. So what we did basically then following that initial idea was to collect more data, a lot of data, and we also did a survey amongst 4,000 households and developed a solution. And the solution is basically for power utility to provide a digital service for households to purchase the most efficient air conditioner at the price of an inefficient one. So let me show you how it works. Can you please click on the next slide? Otherwise, I upload my presentation. Yeah, next again, please. Click again, please. Again, yes, again, please. So basically here, yeah, so basically what the customer can do is to, first of all, use an application or a website to access the platform. The customer will then tell the platform exactly what they are looking for. So for example, here on that slide, we can see that the customer would choose an air conditioner for a bedroom. The customer would provide the details of the size of the room, would indicate the number of people, and would also provide for how many hours the customer plans to use the aircon during the day. Can you please continue clicking? Again, please.
Hello, Ms. Daniela. Sorry to interrupt. You have 2 minutes left for your presentation. Thank you.
So then the platform basically would provide recommendations which exactly match the customer needs. And then the customer chooses an option. The product, this information will be directly transmitted to the manufacturer. The manufacturer then will deliver the product to the installer. The installer will deliver and install the product at the customer's place. Now, via the digital platform, the customer will also get a credit from a bank to cover the higher upfront cost of the efficient air conditioner. Please click. And then, please click twice. Thank you. And then basically the customer can use its electricity savings to repay the credit over time. And often then they can use the electricity savings and even less than their electricity savings to repay the credit over time. And the power utility would basically collect the credit by using the electricity bill and then transmit that payment back to the bank. So what we did also then, of course, to assess in detail the feasibility, you can end the presentation, thank you, to assess the feasibility of that model. It is definitely viable. Basically, households are able to purchase efficient air conditioners at the price of an inefficient air conditioner. They can use their savings to repay any credit they get for the higher upfront cost. And for the power utility, it's also viable. And that is very important, of course, in order to have a scalable model in place. So the power utility can make revenues from different sources. Actually, the power utility can make a profit. And it's very helpful because, of course, the government power utility can also then use the electricity savings to curb cost in infrastructure investments that would otherwise be needed to meet peak demand, and also contributes to carbon emissions. So overall, it's a very attractive model. And of course, I invite all of you to reach out to us if that is an opportunity you would like to also assess for your country or your power utility. But just to conclude here is to really say we have to look at our households. Right now, there's often a lot of focus on industry and commercial, which of course is very important, but households are becoming a huge consumer of electricity. Of course, it's a very difficult market because it's highly fragmented, but that's why it's important to involve the utility, because like I mentioned, the utility has data, has access to these customers, is therefore an important partner, and it will be a win-win solution for the utility, like I said, because it's a new business model to diversify revenues, but also to save costs. So I also encourage basically policymakers to really think about building policies and framework that can support sustainable and self-sustainable business models, because scale is important and time and resources are critical. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniela, for this very insightful presentation on a new idea, how to structure a business model around basically distributing energy efficient air conditioning in households across the ASEAN region. So I would encourage participants to type away some questions on such a model, or if you think this would be applicable also in your country. Next up is our presenter, William Hudson. He is the head of the Southeast Asian Carbon Trust. He's an experienced sustainability professional with a focus on sustainability strategy and green financing. And that's also what he has been working on within the Carbon Trust organization. In the last 2 years, Will's focus has been on the design and the delivery of an energy efficiency component of a £15 million program called the ASEAN Low Carbon Energy Program. It's a 3-year program and focuses on energy efficiency, on green finance, and unleashing energy efficiency markets. Also, his passion is always for the outdoors. And fun fact is he likes to travel, cycle, and hike, kayak. Unfortunately, during COVID, he can only do laps on his bicycle in his condominium. William, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Verena. You know, it's a pleasure to be able to speak this morning, especially alongside such accomplished experts as Alex and Daniela. I will try and move as quickly as I can. So, financing EE projects in ASEAN. Next slide, please. Yeah, so quick agenda. So I'm just going to talk briefly on the barriers and opportunities for EE in ASEAN. EE Finance talk about some of the key actors, instruments and mechanisms that are out there. And then a few case studies of the work that I've been doing through the ASEAN Low Carbon Energy Programme over the last couple of years. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just briefly on the UK government's ASEAN Low Carbon Energy Programme. So it's a 3-year programme. It's just been extended to the end of next year, so 2022. It's focusing on opening markets in 2 areas. So one is energy efficiency, one is green finance. And the overlap is obviously energy efficiency finance, which is an increasing focus of the programme. We're working in 6 countries, and yeah, we're promoting various different interventions in these different markets. Next slide, please. Yeah, so at the beginning of our program, we visited every country. We spoke to all the key stakeholders on EE, and we used a standardized market assessment framework to work out where some of the key gaps are in each of the markets. And of course, in ASEAN, the markets tend to be very early stage, and there are gaps everywhere. You can see in the framework on the right-hand side some of the key things that you would look for. So availability of data is one, and linked to that, awareness of the size of the EE opportunity. Obviously, strong policy, which is comprehensive across sectors, regulations, particularly around product standards and ESCOs, and then the availability of skills, capacity, and technology in each market. And then finally, of course, EE finance. So many gaps, as I mentioned. Some of the key barriers that we've seen, energy subsidies, which people have talked about already, and project sizes being very small, relatively speaking, at least to RE, so aggregation required. Customers tending to focus on their core business, not really understanding the EE opportunity, and perceived risk from both customers and financiers, having not had a huge amount of experience with EE in the past. And then, of course, the absence of this supportive ecosystem. So the reason that I mentioned this ecosystem is that it's bigger than just finance. So you need all of these other ingredients as well to make the finance flow. Some of the key opportunities, I've mentioned most of these already, but yeah, EE finance being a big one. And I think we've talked already as a panel about new business models. So making things work irrespective of those barriers using innovative new business ideas. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just some of the key actors involved. So if you look at the diagram on the right, again, there's sort of 4 buckets of main actors within the EE finance landscape. So you've got The capital providers, that includes international funds and governments, development banks, other institutional investors. You've got the financiers, so local banks, equity investors, etc. You've got suppliers, so technology providers and installers, ESCOs, auditors, etc. And you have your customers or your project hosts, so they can be public sector or across all different industry sectors, particularly industry and buildings. And if the EE finance ecosystem is working, all of these actors will be heavily involved in the flows of capital. And you can see some of those flows in the diagram. And of course, that isn't quite happening in ASEAN. So for example, donor funds are often allocated for both RE and EE. And then the vast majority of those funds then goes to RE, which is generally considered to be easier. So that's one example of a challenge, but I'll quickly highlight some of the key issues faced by suppliers and financiers in particular. So firstly, on the demand side, you have suppliers, which are particularly critical actors as they generate demand for EE projects and finance. Some of the key issues they're facing in ASEAN are a lack of technical capacity, both for identifying and quantifying investment grade project opportunities and also for developing projects themselves. You have a regulatory environment not conducive to the development of EE projects due to things like low product performance standards, limited availability of technology due to weak supply chains, and difficulty accessing certain markets, e.g. the public sector due to specific sort of procurement, budgeting and contracting regulations. And then weak balance sheets and poor access to capital due to restrictive loan terms, including high interest rates and tough collateral requirements. So to assist suppliers with these issues, more TA is needed. And in particular, I think provision of grants or low cost capital to help with demonstration projects in particular. So building pipeline in order that you have projects to be financed. And on the left-hand side, so on the supply side, you have the financiers themselves. Key issues there centre around a lack of in-house expertise, and that includes weak understanding of the EE business model, so cost savings as revenues. That also used to be true of renewable energy business models, incidentally, but government subsidies and guarantees have really helped overcome those barriers. And then a weak understanding of EE technologies and their promised savings, not helped by a lack of good audits and M&B data in the market. And then finally, high perceived risk of EE projects, which I mentioned. And again, in all cases, more TA, more concessional capital and guarantees are needed to help banks get started if those barriers are to be overcome. So just a few main messages. I think there's a need to dedicate more international climate finance to EE, not just RE. There is some evidence of some government EE funds delivering short-term successes in the region, but generally these haven't transformed the market in the longer term and they haven't created a sustainable market. And so more of those funds are needed, having learned lessons from some of the previous editions. And then of course suppliers and banks both need more technical capacity to assess projects. Moving to the next slide, please. Yeah, so EE financing obviously covers a broad toolbox of instruments and mechanisms. We've talked about quite a few of them, so you can see a list of them on this slide. And it tends to include things like grants for project development, concessional loans, and then moving to traditional guarantees and insurance into equity. And the providers of the capital tend to be donors first, second governments, and lastly the private sector. And I think for each market in ASEAN, there really needs to be an appropriate sequencing of these instruments. It could be assisted by a mapping of the existing available instruments and associated volumes of finance in each market. And I know there's been work done on that in the past, but I think that kind of mapping is really helpful for strategically choosing new instruments to become available in the future. Next slide, please. So just moving to a few case studies of the work that LSEP has been involved in the last few years. So one is working with a local government owned investment infrastructure organisation, so PTSMI in Indonesia. So we've been helping SMI to start to develop an EE loans product, developing a loans product manual, and also helping them with some of the risk considerations around EE projects. And we talked about perceived risk that banks have. So we've been looking in particular at sort of customer risk, technical risk, performance risk, contract risk, regulatory risk. And the idea of this project is to get the finance flowing through a traditional loans product. One of the challenges that is likely to be faced is project pipeline going forward. And we'll be looking to deal with that issue as we continue our work. Next slide, please.
Sorry, Mr. William, you have 2 minutes left for your presentation. Thank you.
So another example is the energy savings insurance, which I think has been mentioned in some of the other presentations, but this is something we're looking at fairly closely. So in Latin America, the IADB has launched such a product in Mexico and in other markets as well. And it's something that hasn't been seen in the ASEAN region so far. So we're currently working on a simplified insurance model that could work for EE. And you can see the main actors in this fairly basic diagram. So the implementing entity would pay the insurer a premium. The insurer would then cover the risk of the or the risk for the customer of them not realizing the energy savings of their project. That would enable them to service their loan irrespective of performance, and it would provide comfort to both the local FI involved in lending and as well as the implementing entity and the host. And of course, that premium would be expensive. It would initially, at least, until economies of scale can be realized. And so some donor funding could be useful in the short term to get the thing moving. So that's something we're looking at the moment. Next slide, please. And then this is an example of an innovative new financing instrument that was launched in 2018 by the EBRD, so the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. And it's called a Green Technology Selector, which is a technology list which is owned by EBRD and maintained by EBRD and local experts. And what it does is essentially list technologies which are deemed to be energy efficient and attach financial incentives to those technologies. And that they are then that list is then shared with local financial institutions who can see which technologies are considered useful or proven in terms of delivering a good energy savings, and therefore which products they can attach loans to and lend against. It also helps with the technology buyers to see this verified list, and it's something that in theory could be rolled out in ASEAN, but of course you need to identify an appropriate host, and it's something that we're looking at very seriously at the moment, and working with the EBRD to broker potential introductions in the region.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. Your 10 minutes is up. Please wrap up your presentation, Mr. William. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to wrap up with this final slide. So this is a sort of wider concept for opening up the EE finance more broadly. So this is actually based on the Carbon Trust model sort of 10 plus years ago. The idea is to create a one-stop shop under one roof so that financing and technical advisory and awareness raising can all be delivered by a similar organization in a country. And this is something we've been looking at in Vietnam in particular, but increasingly in other markets. So although it is a little bit of a difficult thing to implement, it is a means of sort of overcoming some of these barriers where different actors are not able to speak to one another, etc. So I'll stop there and leave with that thought, and very, very open to any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, William, for the very interesting presentation on the progress of your program and the ideas to kind of bridge the gap between the challenges on energy efficiency finance at the moment in the region. I also particularly like the comment about energy efficiency and renewable energy supply, because I think that is indeed one of the issues that a lot of the policies combine RE and EE, and it should be more depicted in E. And I know Thailand had actually changed some of their funds to accommodate only then EE projects. So I think that needs to be done perhaps in other countries as well. Brilliant. So now we are moving into the question and answer session. So perhaps if the other presenters, Alex and Daniela, you could also show your video, so we are all together. So I think so far I have only a couple of questions. I'm not sure if it's also related to the chat box issues, but yeah, please keep away making some questions. We still have about 50 minutes left, but I have 3 questions here that I will fire away first. So one of the first questions was actually perhaps more of a broader comment and just question, I think, for you as experts in the field. One person asked about hydrogen and why hydrogen has not been more supported in the region so far. So hydrogen projects. I guess it's not really an EE related question, but if anybody of you could perhaps jump in on that, why hydrogen is not more promoted in the region, would be appreciated. Yes, William?
Yes, it's a good question. I think I'm going to give a really high-level answer, but it's essentially that hydrogen is still a technology that's under development, and I think the infrastructure associated with distributing hydrogen doesn't yet exist in the region, much less sort of generating that hydrogen. And of course, there is a good opportunity to substitute LNG for hydrogen in the future. I think it's just fairly early days, and it may be that sort of more developed markets pioneer the development of these technologies before they're rolled out in ASEAN. That's just a high-level answer.
I don't know. Perhaps Alex, do you also have a comment on that?
Similar to what William is saying, it's all about the post R&D deployment stage. So we're still entering. We need, I think, the market and government and policy should actually help deploy it much faster, so it reaches a full commercialization with safety protocol and of course investors want to see a good return, right? So until there are more hydrogen technologies deployed, delivering returns, and it won't reach the full commercialization yet.
And then perhaps another question on more related to also Alex, your proposal of the equity, that we need some equity finance that can also do off balance financing. I was, and actually also relating to ADB, because there was a question about a project that was implemented, I think, by ADB, where they used an Escort company, I think it was Coffely, that were implementing. So this was kind of a little bit according to that model, correct? Could you perhaps elaborate a little bit about that project and yeah, how is that similar to your idea?
Yes, it was. So it's all about finding an aggregator of Escort contracts in the region, and the ADB loan to 2 tranches of $20 million each actually helped through 4 markets, and there was a nascent market, and they included Cambodia as one of the loan conditionalities. But I think we have to go to beyond Coffely, because if the sponsor has to be as creditworthy as Coffely, now known as NG, then we won't be able to flow that capital fast enough. So we need a new class of aggregators, equity providers, super ESCO-like structures, whether government or private sector, to flow that capital. Otherwise, if we wait for Coffely-like entities with that kind of creditworthiness, debt will not be the answer through the long term.
Perfect, thanks. Daniela, do you also want to comment on that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's just to echo it. I mean, that is the problem. I mean, outside maybe of large industry who can often do it themselves, right? They have the resources. But if we then go into commercial or household sector, it's hugely fragmented, which is very difficult for the ESCO to tap into. And that brings me again also to the business model, what I mentioned, which of course can be adjusted, where I see an opportunity to partner with an utility. And that could be also an aggregator in that regard. But the point is, I fully support that there needs to be a way of aggregating these multiple, very fragmented projects to achieve scale. Yeah.
Perhaps another question to William about your idea with the insurance scheme, because we had in the first session already a question about that. So just wondering how far you are with the project development, and for example, the question was, what would be the incentive for the insurance to engage in those energy efficiency insurance schemes, and how are you thinking about overcoming the problem?
Yeah, very good question. So the answer to the first question is we're not advanced with this at all at the moment. So we're actually working, in multiple countries on various instruments. And I'd say the Philippines is the most exciting market for us at the moment, purely because of the new law that's come in. And we're exploring all manner of instruments within the Philippines. So looking at potential new credit risk guarantee, potentially strengthening existing lending from the GFIs in the Philippines, potentially looking at an energy savings insurance model, which I mentioned, and various other things as well, including technology lists. But at the moment, it's all fairly early stage exploration. So there's going to be more work sort of on the cost benefit of each. and the appropriate sort of stakeholders to be involved in each. And on energy savings insurance, in terms of what's in it for the insurer, well, what's in it for the insurer is a new source of revenue potentially that could be quite lucrative. But I appreciate that in all of the ASEAN markets, the insurance industry is in a fairly early stage. And so one thing we are considering is looking at international insurers to get the thing moving. So that might be one means of overcoming that barrier. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. There was another question for Daniela about the digital platform. So the question was, since the platform will design and size up the air conditioning for the consumer based on the specifications given, what if the consumer claims that they are not comfortable with the room temperature? Sorry, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Yeah, no, that would be the customer, because the thing is, like, right now it's not a model that this would be remotely controlled by the utility. It's really a digital platform, like if you go and buy your mobile phone, right, online basically. So it's this kind of model that you basically will be able to get the information around the most efficient appliances. Like here, initial focus is of course on air conditioner. It can be potentially expanded to other products as well. So you get the information, you know that you are in contact with a reliable manufacturer, and you can basically purchase that product there at a price, like I said, of an inefficient air conditioner, inefficient one, basically a lower cost air conditioner. So the story here also from a marketing point of view is basically customers can access the best technology for a very low cost price, and ultimately this will help everybody then to save electricity, save money, and save carbon emissions. So that's basically it.
Okay, I have two more questions. One is from, I think it's Tom Dresen. I think he wants to speak via the microphone. And another one, just perhaps, I think it's going to be a short one, on a question on the geo exchange in Thailand. So I was wondering, Daniela, have you, apparently the geo exchange is a big technology also in Thailand already. And apparently it's a efficient system to exchange heat from the superficial system. I didn't know about that, so I clarified with the person who asked the question. So have you heard about that, and what's your perhaps response on that technology?
No, I'm sorry, I haven't heard any specifics yet. To look into it. And again, I mean, from ADB point of view, I'm also excited to try to support new innovative technologies as much as we can. So yeah.
Okay, so perhaps you can send Daniela an email about the technology and have a bilateral discussion. We will share the presentations and emails also for all the participants. Yes, Tom, please go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Can you hear me okay? Oh, good. Thanks, Verena. Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to Will's presentation with respect to the replying to what's in it for the insurance companies. And the bottom line is right now they don't see much value in adding energy savings insurance because of the lack of demand. I mean, they're going to need to see significant volume pipeline, and they're not going to be willing to create such a program right now, such a product, until they see that pipeline. And so one of the proposals that Will had in here is, and I've been very active in developing that model. I did it in Mexico, actually. We developed it in Mexico with a Nafinsa bank, had a project set up through the US TDA. This goes back about 10 years ago. And then the Nafinsa bank changed its management, decided they could no longer provide the savings guarantee. But I also accessed it with the Chubb Insurance Group in the US. It was actually there. And so, but one of the things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to actually, when we're talking about two sources of funding, I think what you saw it in Will's chart, one is to provide technical assistance to actually, if you're going to find an insurance company, you need to develop the program for them, set it up, do some demo projects, show them, and then you have to have a first loss pool. That's always been kind of the model that World Bank and other credit risk as Alex knows, they've always done the first loss pool in China and everything for the PCG or the risk sharing facility. So I think we're looking at, in my opinion, what we're going to do. We're talking about trying to do it in Indonesia with some groups, some IFIs, and that would have those two components. You need some donor funding. Number one, for the technical assistance. 3 uses of that: help them develop the scheme, develop a pipeline, and hire an internal staff to evaluate the projects. Okay, and then the other is the first loss. So I think those are pretty key components to really getting something going in Southeast Asia.
So just to add, so basically you say you also need to provide technical assistance to the insurance company
Definitely.
to convince them. Yes. Okay.
That's right. And the first loss pool to help them, because they're not going to understand the risk at all, and they're not going to take that risk. They don't understand energy efficiency, so they're certainly not going to step up and guarantee the savings. And one of the other pieces is the savings that's needed is to guarantee debt service repayment to the loans to the banks. And the IDB program is not quite that extensive. It's more of a technical guarantee. So I don't think it quite gets you there. So anyway, I could go on and on, but I just wanted to provide that additional input.
No, that's perfect, Tom. Thanks. And I think so far I had no other additional questions. So I think, like I said before, so we could perhaps wrap up the session. So like I said before, if you want to bilaterally also contact the presenters, we will share the presentations and contacts also via email to you later. And thanks a lot for the panelists for their presentations. And then we will move on into our final session, which is more focused on technical MRV trainings. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right, perhaps we can go back to our slides and then we can go into the session 3, which is our last session of today. So bear with me another 30 minutes and then your full morning content presentations will be over. But I think this will be a very interesting session as well, as it is more a practical oriented session towards sharing more more practical insights about MNV and why is it so important for energy efficiency projects. This session will be co-facilitated by Kevin Hoare and also by Pagrio Silatonga, who will also join us for the Q&A. So the next slide, please. So just to introduce the speaker and trainer, so Mr. Kevin Hoare is a registered professional engineer and registered electrical engineer manager. He has developed and implemented low-cost and no-cost energy efficiency projects in several ASEAN countries. He has experience of EPC contracts and PV project commissioning in Malaysia. And he also has worked as a consultant in general to advise on energy efficiency policy and incentive schemes and also funding schemes across the region. One fun fact about him, and it is a joint habit with Mrs. Wulandari, he's also chasing for very good dessert places as his wife is working in that business in Malaysia. So Kevin, please, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. And I apologize, first of all, that my camera on my laptop doesn't work. This is a loaner laptop, so a lot of things that I had are now forced to be on an ad hoc basis. So I just wish to highlight that what I'm presenting to you right now is something that it does not originate from me. It does come from many different sources. But the contents of which I just want to highlight and to bring awareness to you that as you develop energy projects, and what I speak of today is really from take a step back, think less of a project developer, think more of the person who's responsible for dispersing out the money. And if you can go to the next slide. So the other speakers before me have mentioned and talked about the different risk involved. And this is just a real summary of the risk from the different sources that you can find online. But what I will do today is to really go through and possibly explain through some context and provide you context as to the reasons why they go about putting them as a risk and possibly provide you with examples why they're a risk and what considerations you might consider when you undertake your daily work from whichever part of the industry you're from. Right, next slide, please. So let's start off, right, from when you are, take the position as if you are a project developer and you are developing a project and you set about going to assess a project against your potential client. One of the first things that you would be looking at is to look at the possible assets and liabilities that your client may be incurring on their balance sheets, right? And to assess how their business is doing, because you don't want to be doing, especially if you're doing an Escort business, you don't want to be putting assets into a client who may, in 5 years down the line, potentially go out of business or be in an industry that does not have a good outlook. So these are some of the key things that many of the financiers look at when they assess how you, as the project developer, go about looking for your client. And they have, in the financial world, they do develop very comprehensive metrics on figures as to how they assess this, and they assign scores to these sort of criteria. So when they look at the different assets, liabilities, how good the income is, how good EBITDA is for both developer and the client, and assess on the industry level as well, what the repayment capacities will look like in the future. So most of these energy projects, they're not short, they could be long term. Some going even up to 7 years in tenure. And so these are real practical risks when they think about what are the likelihood of me not getting my money back from a finances perspective. So there are different ways to which in different countries how you could do credit risk, and you do have regulatory risk as well in some countries where the country credit rating could be an issue if the country is politically stable or not. So imagine things in Myanmar, for example. So projects there would find it very difficult to raise financing or even have financing, even at the SME level, because of the turbulence within the country. Different things, so like incentives that were mentioned as well, that could encourage energy efficiency financing. This contributes towards the financial model, but then finances need to be thoroughly educated and shown and prove and be proven that these incentives really contribute and add significant value to the hurdle rates within the project. And many often it's not mentioned that financiers also like to look at the environmental and HSE risk and how this is managed within projects. So a lot of the focus so far has been on getting money into these projects, but the ability to implement these projects in compliance to environmental HSE risk, we take it as a given that larger companies tend to have less of an issue to do it, but small SME companies may not necessarily be able to comply with all environmental HSE risk. And finally, there's the market risk in any country, in any industry. Next, please. So the key thing in energy projects is the baseline. The baseline provides the credibility and sets upon the risk that could be inherent in the project, how this baseline is developed, what kind of technologies that were deployed within this project, how matured it is. Good examples were given by the Carbon Trust just now from the European Development Bank as to how they would then put on a roster potentially to then where you can leverage on to get track record. These things are not existent, that's very true, and so therefore does not build on credibility when applicants go to a financial institution or to any financer, especially if it's a very new technology. So this new technology could claim to save a lot of energy, but without having demonstrated track record, it's really difficult for the guys who bring the paper to a board to approve the loans. It's really difficult for them to get approval for new technologies. And there's also considerations on force majeure and how force majeure could impact baselines. So these are things that they're not really talked about very often, but they are important when you deep dive into these sort of components in trying to get projects financed. Then once issues with baselines are sorted, you then have to go look at how price or the revenue risk may be mitigated. So what kind of WACCs were used in the calculations, what kind of premiums that may have been assumed. Payment terms are important as well. Some companies, some contracts with very extremely long payment terms or delays in payment terms could impact the ability to repay or service loans. So it's always good to have these concerns, right, addressed from the developer level to the financiers. And with just to tie back to force majeure just now, right? So imagine now that we're in COVID, and you wanted to do a cooling project for a commercial shopping mall. With shopping malls closing, then there is a huge significant volume and price risk. So how would then these be mitigated within the contracts or within the negotiations? These are details that need to be addressed very early on as you try to get financing. And ways there needs to be ways to come up to try to address these issues and fill up these gaps within these potential contracts that we have. Then if contracts are also dependent on very dependent on energy prices, so for example in markets where say a certain commodity, say natural gas or petrol is highly subsidized, then if the subsidy is lifted, would that then create an impact into the returns, project returns? These are questions, again, needs to be addressed very early on, and needs to be dealt with in a very transparent manner with forecast and sensitivities done up to assess the levels of return impacts that you could achieve if, let's say, price of, say, natural gas were to go up by 10%. Yeah. Then taking into consideration things like CPI inflation onto your O&M, any foreign currency or insurance assumptions that you've made, what kind of insurance you're procuring, what kind of insurance you're guaranteeing to provide when you implement the projects. These are, again, very nitty-gritty, but important in any project financing. Next, please. Now, the baselines and how you then assess an energy saving in the project is done through measurement and verification. Credible plans and competent professionals are recommended, and this was highlighted by Alex just now as well in the earlier presentations. So this is something that provides credibility to the overall business plan, and there has to be abilities to amend these plans or these proposals of how you do measurement and verification down the line, and these details have to be detailed out when you go out to get financing, and there's a lot of level of detail and effort to produce such and to negotiate such with clients, and it's not mentioned very frequently as well. And metering accuracy is something that's extremely important. Some clients may require for you to have third-party calibration on some of your equipments frequently. Issues like this and how you take into account these potential losses, especially if you have to have third-party remove the equipment, take it out for calibration. If they've been accounted for in the financial models, these are extremely important to take note and make note to when you go into project financing or wanting to get financing for projects. Then the general assessments of construction capabilities, O&M capabilities, track record of equipments, how warranties will be dealt with. So in the event, say, a critical equipment goes into failure through no fault of any party, who then comes into place to step in? Would there be a loaner equipment? Would there be a very short turnaround time to get a warranty from a manufacturer? These are things that, again, needs to be addressed. Occupancy offtake ties hand in hand with the earlier point on the say for that draws back to the COVID example. So that these are important things to think about, and the project team as an overall management of things, if there instills confidence within the project finances. Next slide, please. So measurement verification is pretty much governed in the marketplace today by a IPMVP, which is an international protocol. It's the process of using measurements to reliably determine actual savings created with an individual facility by an energy management program. So these definitions are pretty standard from the protocol, and and it can be used by the different parties involved in any energy project to make reference to the different ways to securitize the payments and to securitize the methods in which savings will be demonstrated and proven to the different parties involved. Next, please. Sorry, next slide. So thanks. So these are details of IPMVP. I will leave this up for general reading, but the protocol essentially spells out methods in which you can carry out energy saving calculations traded off against the required level of accuracy and the cost of actually installing the different equipments required to do so. An example for this is for LED lighting. LED lighting, should you need to measure and verify, say 10,000 light points in any building or industrial facility, it is extremely costly to do so, because the labor cost to do so, the time cost to do so is extremely high, and neither would it be practical to install metering equipment to do so for 10,000 light points. So then how you then do it in any building, especially if the lighting circuits are not segregated out neatly in any distribution board, then that's where IPMVP comes in to recommend the necessary, the best way forward to do so through sampling points and assessing the level of uncertainties in those measurements to do so.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Kevin Hur, you have 2 minutes left for your presentation. Thank you.
Right. Thanks. So this helps create transparent and repeatable methods, right? And next slide, please. So IPMVP doesn't cover how to design the measures, how to design or locate the instrumentations within any project, but and neither does it provide you an idea of how to cost it out to do these measurement verification. Right. Next slide. So this is just an example of how measurement verification does that. Once you agree on a baseline, you would then have adjustments, and it gives you a good way to then calculate or estimate the savings thereafter. Next slide. This again, I leave it here for reference, so that if we ever need to, we can come back to this. Next slide, please. But it goes about just describing the different options that you have. These are very technical in details, and you will only go into when you go into actual project development. Next slide again. Thank you. So one of the final things I want to go about is really to tell you that in legal terms, right, a fair bit of effort needs to go into the legal considerations as to whether there will be deposits to offset repayments as we wait for payment terms. And then if there's a ability of rights to terminate service and recover assets, and how you will in fact address concerns when there are change in law. So these are some of the items that could be important when you go about looking and developing energy projects. Next slide. I believe should be the last slide. Oh, sorry. So this is just to illustrate to you, right, that two projects with two different cash flows, right, can have the same IRR, but one project would have a positive NPV to which you would want to implement, while the other would not. So again, how you develop your cash flows and you present this to financiers are critically important and needs to be highlighted and capacity built within smaller energy project developers. Next slide. Credit risk impacts, just to highlight what I mentioned just now, different countries have different impacts. You can see risk for a AAA country versus a number of Southeast Asian countries are not AAA, and therefore there is a significant risk impact as well, and risk premium in public sector projects as well. Next slide. And these, the following slides that you'll see, and you can just run through it just to see how different institutions put in or help you assess risk of the different parts of the evaluation process when they think about wanting to give out loans to projects. Next slide. The next slide again. And this is the last slide to it, just as a summary of it all. And this is a framework proposed and it's really for you to have a read and to remind yourself of the things that, and hopefully the examples that I have explored throughout this conversation we've had today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, for the presentation. I would ask Pak Rio to share or to conduct the Q&A, if possible. If there are any questions from the audience, or if Pak Rio can also pose some. Pak Rio, please.
Actually, there is no, but interesting to note the inside presentation from Kevin and how, sorry. Yeah. Energy saving are typically assessed using measurement and verifications, and he also talking about the protocol, the international protocol to be followed for the MNRP. I think he went through the typical project list also from a financier and developer perspective, which hopes to provide webinar participant with consent from the various stakeholders. Maybe while we are waiting, we keep encouraging the participants. If you have any question, just feel free to drop your question on the chat box. But Kevin, just a quick question from me. I mean, talking about the baseline, I think this is most prominent factor in order to measure the energy saving of the energy efficiency project in the period of the project. So how is it going if there is adjustment to the contract? I mean, adjustment to the measurement. So how the MNP protocol will be applied? So Kevin, would you like please to give explanation? Yeah.
So the initial MFP plan would highlight the static factors required and any other factors that could impact the baseline. And so an agreement would have been reached within the parties of the contract as to how changes would be made in most cases. So for example, in the case of a shopping mall, right, say affected by COVID, then it is hoped that there would be provision in the contract that there would be a minimum offtake, that even if 60% of the tenants within the mall are not allowed to operate, that the investor of the, say, a chiller project in that shopping mall would still be able to be paid a certain amount within the contracts. And so that's where the baseline comes in, and that's where you're constantly monitoring the baselines of the particular project to then ensure that you're securitizing your payments, be it whether the building uses more energy or less energy as it operates throughout the lifespan of it.
Thank you, Kevin, for your interesting note. It's interesting to note as well your brief introduction on MNRP that's a reminder that a well-documented and agreed method is very important to ensure the long-term cash flows for an energy project is secure and will not dispute it between the contracting parties. I mean, I just want to relate to the pandemic situations. I mean, from my journal perspective, so how do you think the MMP will be conducted during pandemic? So is it going to hinder the project because the MMP is measurement to the field? I mean, to the actual. Yeah, I mean, if you can also explain how the measurement is all about. I mean, I think that will be useful also to the webinar participant reference. Kevin, please.
So in a pandemic where consumption drops significantly, be it whether it's in a commercial building or a industrial building, MMV it essentially as you go into option B, for example, where things can be automated and the data put on cloud, you can get data, say for example, chill water flow rates, you can get chill water temperatures, to which you can then make the necessary calculations for your baseline and for your calculation of your savings. These measurements in a pandemic, the collection of data would not be impacted. However, it then goes necessary within the contracts that in the event of such events that they can, the two parties can sit down and come to a mutual agreement. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah. Yeah, we are still keeping encouraging the participants to ask questions. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate. So we can discuss with the associate speaker here on the technical knowledge on the MRP system. But if there is none, I think thank you, Kevin, again for your insight on the MMP. I think yes, it's very worth it, especially to get project secure and then to mitigate the dispute between the contracting parties. Yeah, Verena, I think that's from my side. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Pagrio, and thanks, Kevin, for the panel session 3. I would like to now ask the organizers to post the post-evaluation form, please, in the chat, and perhaps also as a presentation slide, so for people that cannot access the chat, that they can see the link also as a presentation slide. We would like to ask you to do an evaluation of today's workshop, how you liked it and what could be improved, also to help us for tomorrow. We will also still have a quick summary session and closing session after this, so we will give you 10 minutes to fill in the form. And also a reminder about tomorrow, if you are still interested to pitch your idea about an energy efficiency project, please send us an email. I have posted the email address, but I will do it just right now again. And yes, we will convene again in about 10 minutes. Thank you. All right, perhaps we are back to do a final summary and closing, which will be rather quick. Thanks for bearing with us. Hold on, I will just try to share my screen. That's that one. Okay. I hope. Hold on. Oop. This does not work. Hold on. Okay. All right. I hope you all can see my screen. So basically, we heard right in the beginning of the day the welcoming remarks, kind of to set the stage why we were talking about energy efficiency finance. So the executive director of ACE, Mr. Nuki Utama, he shared that obviously ASEAN is actually quite on a good way to accomplish their targets with an energy intensity by 21.8% in 2019. But still, to achieve further the targets, energy efficiency finance is one of the barriers that need to be further overcome. Mr. Sergey from AGEP also highlighted the importance to increase our efforts in collaboration in order to achieve the new and more ambitious energy efficiency intensive target in the APEC as well. And Thailand provided also obviously their example on how they pushed for energy efficiency finance in the past and how to support the energy efficiency subsector network under ACE to apply or to share experiences on energy efficiency finance. Then in the different session, what we've heard in session 1, which focused more on the overview of energy efficiency finance mapping in ASEAN, that the ASEAN member states already have experience on energy efficiency finance mechanisms. We have seen the chart of Mrs. Wulandari on in which countries, which financial mechanisms are deployed. So there are the incentives, dedicated EE grants, dedicated EE loans, equity and guarantee mechanisms, and also dedicated funds or green bonds and leasing. We also heard that there are already capacity building initiatives offered on energy efficiency finance and also to different country groups. That was the presentation from Pagrio on the JOIC program, where it was pointed out that the different countries have different stages and some might more focus on policy development to support energy efficiency finance, while others more advanced will more focus on how to attract third-party financiers into their countries for energy efficiency. And then lastly, Thailand presented also on their current statuses, and I think the most exciting was that there's a new scheme coming up which more focuses on a subsidy on the interest rate for the banks, a 3% subsidy rate, and also a 1% credit guarantee for small and medium enterprises to invest into energy efficiency to also help ESCOs in Thailand. I think one of the questions also was asked how insurance can really play a role and how the insurance companies can be convinced about this project. And I think we also discussed it a little bit in the second session that it is actually really necessary to help and assist with TA, with technical assistance from developing organizations to support, to give insurance companies the confidence. Okay, so for the session 2, which was more focused from the private and international organizations' perspective on energy efficiency finance, I think here it was clear that there is a tremendous untapped investment potential in energy efficiency to unleash off-balance finance via ESCOs, was also proposed by Alex Ablaza from the ESCO Industrial Alliance. Then also, he said that a very robust energy efficiency and ESCO policy framework and incentive framework has to be in place. Also, that third-party equity is still needed to provide the off-balance sheet finance to support ESCOs, which at the moment is not happening and is very much needed to unleash some of these energy efficiency projects. So he has an idea to, then also Daniela Schmidt from ADB presented her idea about the on-bill financing scheme for ACs into the residential buildings. So basically to offer a subsidy on the price difference between energy efficient ACs and non-efficient ACs, using the discussions in Thailand as a case study. And then finally, we also heard that there are some international development organizations such as Carbon Trust who are currently working on also further developing new schemes such as the energy efficiency insurance, possibly in Philippines because of their current legal framework for energy efficiency via the energy efficiency law that they have passed in 2019, and also to promote the technology lists for financiers to understand the energy efficiency technologies, the proven energy efficiency technologies, and they would derive that from a list and a technology listing system provided by the European Development Bank. So this was, I think, the wrap-up of session 2. Then session 3, we heard from Kevin some really useful insights about when you're coming from a financier's point of view to an EE project, what is going to be really important to them to know, and really good also to hear, like from a project developer, some of the little faults or problems that might occur. And he also provided some useful insights about a possible way forward, how to do due diligence for energy efficiency projects in a proper way that can also be accepted by financiers. So I think with this, then perhaps just some of the questions that we discussed about hydrogen and also about the insurance schemes. So yes, so that, and also I think that there are some new technologies again in the energy efficiency space like geo-exchange that still need to be further explored. So with this, I would like to basically close this workshop for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I will see you tomorrow. Just again, bear in mind that tomorrow the workshop will start at 1 p.m., so not in the morning, but it will start at 1 p.m. Jakarta time. And hope you will join us again and bring forward a lot of questions. And finally, the reminder again, if you want to pitch your energy efficiency project idea, then please send us an email at 3 p.m. as provided in the chat box just now. And thank you very much. And with here, I would like to close the workshop on energy efficiency finance policy and financing in ASEAN, the day 1. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.